Hey guys, it's Steven. Been a real long time since my last video, about 4 months now, and time's really been flying by here. So we've got plenty of things to go over. I actually have had this YouTube channel for about a year now, so I want to say thanks to everybody who has subscribed, interacted with my posts. It means a lot to me. To get into everything I want to go over, I'm going to be talking about what's happened with Neo Tokyo, what's coming with Neo Tokyo, and also I'm going to go over Umami, what we've been able to accomplish over the last couple months, and what's coming up with Umami too. A lot of exciting things there. So just to start off, we have the NeoTokyo.codes website. If you haven't been here, I highly recommend it. They have a news section here where you can go over, all the latest crypto news, with NFTs, Web3, you name it. So it's a really good resource, and it's completely free. So I highly recommend it. And you can also see my articles here. So I do monthly articles on the BYTES, pivot charts, and just certain things that will be affecting the BYTES price. So this was from a couple days ago, and you can see I like to talk about things that are coming up, like the BYTES 2 economics paper. A lot of cool things, but let's just go ahead and just start with the chart. So when we're looking at the last couple months here, some interesting things have set up. So looking at the monthly pivot charts, it's actually given some very good indicators of when to accumulate and when to distribute tokens. So basically all these pivots they're just averages, right? There's an average price, and when the price gets above or below the average, it kind of shows you that there's, okay, well, now we're hitting R1, R2, R3. As you move higher through these pivots, there's more risk in the market, right? And that's basically what's happened. So you can see in October we hit this resistance, and we came all the way back down to the next monthly support, and came below it, and then now we're back at the central pivot. So um, using these pivots, you can actually accumulate and distribute pretty capital efficiently, because if you provide support through Uniswap, you can use single-sided just ETH support. You can accumulate these these dips and accumulate when nobody wants it, and then you can distribute when the cycle turns around. So whether you use like Chromatica limit orders, if you don't know what Chromatica is, it's just a automated liquidity pool position system. So what it does is it creates a liquidity position for you, and once your target price has been hit, it removes the order for you. So if you want to sell some bytes, you could put an order in at like a pivot, and if somebody comes and buys those bytes, it turns into ETH, and then they remove that liquidity. So essentially a limit order. So looking at the pivots for November, we have this magnet at 455, and more importantly is really the bytes to Ethereum ratio. And why that's important is, why would you buy bytes if you're not going to be outperforming Ethereum? That's the whole goal. Like, why not just buy Ethereum? So some pretty interesting setups that happened in November, where we actually came down to the first pivot support, and you could see that there was very strong support here where there was buying, there was liquidity support, and that ended up being a very good buying opportunity. And you've actually had an 80% move from the lows here to the highs here. So very beneficial to be paying attention to these opportunities. And like I said, these aren't really predicting anything. It's just giving you a good way to assess the risk, right? If it's in the green, it's not as risky as buying when it's in the red, right? Because there's a good chance that the price moves back to the central pivots, because the central pivots are just the average price. So that's basically it. And a few things that have also interestingly affected the price is the fact that since our last video was on um, August 4th, and since then we can see that the bytes yield was turned off on August 10th. So a couple days after my previous video, they stopped emitting BYTES tokens through the token contract, and they did this to get ready for BYTES 2.0. So looking over here, you can see on the 10th, this is when we stopped emitting BYTES tokens, and you can see there was a lull. One of the benefits of having emissions as it created a lot of volume, right? People would claim it, then sell it, and then maybe some people would buy it. So it was pretty beneficial from a liquidity pool standpoint. But I was expecting it to create a lull, but what ended up happening is that we started to actually get some utility, some need for the BYTES token within the ecosystem. So, we had the non-fungible arcade. You needed BYTES tokens to take part of that. You had the mint defense. You needed BYTES token to, take part of the mint defense, and then also the city capital, which is the, investment platform to get access to, to new projects. So, all those things together just created demand for the token. So even though that there were no emissions, there was still some pretty good action here. So overall, it's pretty interesting. And then we looking at how this kind of set up over the past couple months here. We obviously all know what happened with the FTX collapse here, and that's what we saw with this large sell-off. So overall, like I showed before, there was a support made, and now look at it. Since my last update a couple days ago, you can see that we've actually moved to one of the first pivot targets here, which is the R1. And yeah, I mean, great move. We're up 23% today. So we'll see if people still want to come in. And I think this is all off of a recent tweet from Becker, that, people, or actually it was a retweet, that people still need BYTES. Each citizen can, each S1 can have 2,000 BYTES per citizen, right, to stake. Each S2 citizen can have about 200 BYTES. So, looking at my previous research, I mentioned that, there is a chart here that shows how prepared everybody was, right? And you can see that, people who have more than 2,000 was pretty low. And then especially for the S2 citizens, basically almost everybody didn't have any BYTES at all. So if they want to take part in the ecosystem, they're going to have to buy BYTES, and that's a significant amount of BYTES that need to be accumulated, right? They can get up to 200. So if you haven't looked through this, Citizen System Guy made a really great chart, going through all these details. This is just one of the small details there. But I mean, like I said, there's still opportunity here. Obviously the point is to accumulate low and sell high. So we'll see where this all ends up. We're really starting to see the vision for what these BYTES tokens are going to be, right? How are we going to use these tokens? And I think Becker outlined it pretty well a couple days ago. And the whole point is to create a self-sustaining ecosystem using these BYTES. So there's going to be we know there's going to be emissions with the BYTES, but we're going to bring in creators and developers who are going to be incentivized with these BYTES to increase the need for, or just increase the utility for NeoTokyo, right? So a good example that he's showing here is the upcoming citizen upgrade shop. So by creating these upgrades that citizens might want, they can get paid in the BYTES token, right? So incentivize building, and it'll benefit the community. Right? You already have a built-in market for your products. So I mean, there's also other things as well. That we also have the whitelist marketplace as well. If you want to get whitelist, you can use BYTES to do that. As far as, outside of the NeoTokyo ecosystem, from what I understand is people will not, outside of NeoTokyo will not be able to stake yet, but that is something that's going to happen. So I am interested to see how we can bring people outside the NeoTokyo ecosystem into the ecosystem and make them want to use BYTES. I'm sure that is on the roadmap, but we just aren't necessarily there yet. So moving on, this kind of leads me to my next topic. So, we know that we're going to have these projects that are going to be earning BYTES, and what are they going to do with those BYTES? If they can't necessarily pay devs and BYTES and stuff like that. So that kind of leads me to my next topic, which is liquidity. And with liquidity, especially for the BYTES token, it's kind of similar to if you're a project that has tokens, like this kind of reminds me of Umami, and how to raise capital, for the treasury. So by using these concentrated liquidity pools, um, by if you're a project that has been earning in BYTES, you need to create fungibility for those tokens. It's a very important thing. And the best way to do that is to, add them to the liquidity pool so that if there is demand for those tokens, your BYTES can be turned into Ethereum, right? And then with Ethereum, you can pay your devs into USD or whatever it may be, right? So I think liquidity strategy is going to be key, because you don't want to not only concentrate all these BYTES into one place and not really have those BYTES circulating. You want the BYTES to be circulating around. But if we are able to, stabilize the BYTES price by adding liquidity, that creates a foundation, right? You can see here that there's a foundation for the BYTES token. People added BYTES at the lower price, and now look what's here. There's a lot of support for the BYTES token. So that's basically what I envision happening, with all these different projects accepting BYTES, is just to, and not only that, they're going to be able to add these BYTES and then also farm off of all these fees too. If you're looking at how much fees are being earned a day, it could get up to 500 to 1,000 a day. So I think that's important. And let's see, what else can we go over today? I guess, we can also just kind of look forward at, what's going to be happening in the future here. So, we know that we have the ecosystem of all these different developers, games that are going to be, using the BYTES ecosystem, or can be, they have access to it. But what's coming up, we have the Codex event. So tentatively set for tomorrow is we're going to be getting some clues as to what's happening, right? And it's kind of interesting how all these things are setting up. We have the NeoTokyo.code getting very active. We also saw the oops, sorry, I just want to play this for you here. It's kind of cool. We also saw the Superverse, so Superfarm rebranding to Superverse the other day. So everything's kind of coming together here. And, there's a lot of interesting things here. So, and if you don't know what the NeoTokyo codexes are, it's just kind of our lore and, the story of NeoTokyo and, and how, and how we plan to just kind of expand our little city here. So very interesting how that's all setting up. So I'm excited to see what happens tomorrow, right? If there are some opportunities to get some more information, right? What else do we have? Yeah, I mean, I guess we can just kind of finish with NeoTokyo here. You can see 12.34 there. And let's just move on to Umami. So Umami's also been very busy. Our community continues to grow. And if you don't know much about Umami, you're from the NeoTokyo community. This is a project I work for. I am a core contributor. And what we're trying to build is institutional grade DeFi products, right? You can see that we launched a new front end, and it's a lot more professional, and it's got some great data. So, you can go ahead and check out. You have the Umami circulating supply. You can see what percent is staked. You can see how many people are compounding their Umami that's staked. So, really useful. And we also have, the dashboard that shows, the APR of the Umami token. And, this is the APR. Before our flagship products are even out. We're still developing our main flagship partnership, our products. So this is definitely an exciting time because we really just don't know how well the Umami token in particular can perform as far as generating yield for the for the marinators, for the stakers. So pretty exciting there. And another thing that we've accomplished over the last couple months is really just finalized and implemented the Umami LLC entity. So Umami Labs, basically, what we are doing here is we're allowing the Umami DAO to hire the Umami LLC employees. And in this way, what we're able to do is we can access developers through traditional on-ramps, right? We don't have to pay devs through crypto. We can do this through fiat, and just kind of have, the contractors through that way. So this creates a larger talent pool for us to hire from. And it really, shout out to our legal team. Alex has just done an amazing job in protecting us and adding these legal structures that that basically benefit the DAO, right? And it's we could go into deep exactly why this is needed, and Uniswap does the same thing as far as this type of structure. But it is the right thing to do, and I'm really glad that we are definitely pioneering this type of hybrid system where the DAO benefits from the LLC, and the LLC is just a nonprofit organization that can hire outside of the traditional DeFi talent pool. So this also leads us to our next thing that we're working on, which is Umami Advisors. So um, with the Umami Advisors, we're trying to like we said, we're pioneering the institutional adoption of DeFi. So by creating another entity, we're going to be able to create a US legally compliant custodial service for those that want DeFi exposure, but they just don't want to have to deal with getting a MetaMask, bridging, and doing all these things that we kind of take for granted within the space here. So, by creating these custodial services in a safe and transparent way, and being able to, onboard people into the products that we're developing, it's a really exciting exciting idea, and I can't wait to see all these things get implemented. Everything's kind of coming together here. So, what we're really working on here, which is our flagship product, which is it's the GMX GLP Volts. So if you're from NeoTokyo, you're not familiar. The GMX platform is on Arbitrum, and basically it's just a perpetual pool where you can trade, you can buy and sell, use leverage, and it's completely decentralized. It's a permissionless platform to use. And the basics are, you deposit into their platform through an asset called GLP. GLP is just a basket of tokens. And you can see the weights here and how much each token is. And then you just become the counterparty to people who trade. If they want to go long Bitcoin, you let them borrow the Bitcoin, vice versa. So overall, the performance of GLP has been very good because, most of the time traders aren't necessarily winning. And on top of that, there's just the yield bearing aspects of that. So, what Umami is building is something to take advantage of these extremely high APRs. Last week with the FTX event, we saw APR getting as high as 50%. So even at 30% right now, by depositing in the GLP, it's very high. And the problem with this is you have to have exposure to Bitcoin, Ethereum, and a little bit of Link and a little bit of Uniswap. And the problem is maybe you don't want exposure to all those things, and you only want exposure to the US dollar. So, what we're going to be building is vaults where we can separate these different assets, and then internally we can hedge within our vaults so that you can get just USDC APR, right? I mean, if you can get double-digit APR from a relatively safe yield source here, like GMX, GLP, I mean, this is a very scalable product, as you can see. $377 million locked in here. So, as Umami tests and scales these vaults, we can actually be a core contributor to expanding the total value locked into this ecosystem. And we have a track record of launching products. So if you don't know, we originally launched a version 1 of the Volts, and unfortunately, the performance was not as expected. We used a different hedging strategy because we initially only did USDC, where we had to hedge everything, just straight out, right? We didn't have counterparties like a Bitcoin and an ETH vault to kind of average out the hedging exposure, and it gets expensive if you do it that way. And the particular way that we hedged was with perpetual pools, which it just wasn't as efficient. It wasn't as flexible because there was like an 8-hour window, and it didn't work out. And I could go on about this, but we're going to be releasing a white paper why that didn't work, and along with the information on our current volts, and that will be coming out later this month. So definitely excited to share, the exact returns that we're expecting, but I'll just let the numbers speak for themselves when they do come out here. So for me personally, what have I been working on at Umami? That we do have this token system where you stake your tokens, and you have to stake them for the month, and you can unlock them on the 1st and the 2nd of each month. So it creates an interesting dynamic for the token. So here you can see the Umami token. This is Umami versus Ethereum. And ever since we created this Uniswap pool back in February, obviously it's been performing very well. And that's just a function of being able to have more control over the supply, and then have more control over the support of the token with Uniswap version 3 compared to other liquidity pools. It's much more flexible and a lot less risk too, right? So an interesting thing that's kind of set up here is, because people could unlock on the 1st of every month, what we would see is we'd see kind of large sell-offs during unlocks, right? So you have the 1st here, you'd have an unlock, people will all sell together. Same thing here, unlock, everybody would sell. So you have people who wanted to take profits. So what I ended up creating is a separate liquidity pool for the locked token. So we have something called CM Umami, which is compounded Umami. And let's go ahead and pull up the chart here. And what that allows people to do is, if you wanted liquidity within the, during the month where we are locked, we created a market so that, you could come and sell tokens for a discounted price. So every one Umami, um, every one CM Umami is equal to about 1.08 Umami, and that's just a function of how the compounding works within the contract, because they're constantly being more Umami bought in the contract. That's just how it works. So creating this kind of exit valve for people who did want to sell if they're predicting a possible, maybe they predicted that the price will go down a few percent during unlock. Maybe they wanted to sell a little early, right? So that's kind of the exit valve that that we created, right? And it creates this this kind of like this game theory. So um, you know, if you do sell, you can actually be an arbitrager who come in and buys these discount. Like if you bought at 1.02, you could go ahead and exchange that for 1.08 right after unlock. You just bought the Umami at a discount, right? So all this kind of led up to Camelot. So they just launched recently on Arbitrum, and it's actually a perfect fit. So even though we do have the CM Umami liquidity pool that anybody can use, that's permissionless, so you have community providing liquidity there, we went ahead and made a partnership with Camelot. And what Camelot allows us to do is customize our liquidity pool. So, if we want to incentivize people to buy, what we did was we created basically a zero fee. So there's no trading fee if you want to buy the CM Umami off the market. And if you want to sell Umami, there's a 2% fee, right? So we're incentivizing people to purchase on this market, and then if they need to sell, they can sell, right? So what happens is it creates a pretty stable exchange rate, and it creates this exit valve so that now that we just had our unlock here. Let's just check on how we're doing. We're actually above the price of the unlock here. So if you zoom in here, you can see this was the unlock. A little bit of volatility, but we're already back above it. So this game theory where if people are kind of already expecting and waiting for these unlocks to come in and buy, right? They want to buy cheap Umami. So really happy of how all that's played out. And yeah, I mean, as far as just the regular liquidity pool, everything's been very very good and relatively easy to keep track of and make sure that all I'm doing is I'm providing I'm providing Umami. If there's a little bit more supply, I can come in and provide more supply here. And if there's support needed, if the price gets too low, we could always come in and accumulate Umami for the treasury at a discount, because we do believe that Umami is a valuable token. And when these products launch, I think the value will be clear, right? So that's just, simply what we're doing here. And really, I guess I'll just highlight the benefits of using Uniswap. Uniswap allows us to, right now we have about 200 ETH provided as liquidity support, right? So instead of providing liquidity from 0 to infinity, we can concentrate liquidity. And what that allows us to do is it allows us to provide more treasury into yield-bearing assets like GLP, and that provides more ETH rewards to the marinators, right? So overall, the strategy's been working out very well. And also, as a Uniswap also works really well for raising capital for the treasury. Instead of having to do capital raises, where we do token swaps for Umami for treasury if we need capital, if we need runway. What we can do is we can just simply provide the Umami in the liquidity pool, and this is an open source way to raise capital, right? Whether we use these automated systems like Chromatica, right? We can provide, assume we could provide liquidity here at 20, people come and buy it, right? So now we have raised capital for our treasury. that capital that was put in the liquidity pool order is taken back into the treasuries, right? So it's a way to fund our runway. So if you haven't, heard of Chromatica, if you go to Umami's Twitter, we did do an AMA with them last week. And that's something that we are definitely doing a lot. I actually have a AMA scheduled in the next hour here. We're going to be doing an AMA with Vendor Finance. So Vendor Finance, if you haven't heard of them, they're just a lending borrowing platform, and they've got some a pretty easy system to use here. Let me see if I can get this to pull up. But simply, if you have CM Umami, you don't want to sell it, and it's compounding, it's earning interest, you can use that CM Umami to to borrow funds. If you don't want to sell, you're confident it's going up higher, you can borrow funds and then just repay it back. And then because you're earning interest already with your Umami, it kind of lowers the cost to do so. So, and we also have a lot of cool other lending options too that are coming. So we'll just leave that for for later. And looking forward, we're going to be releasing backtesting data on our GLP volts. So I think everybody's going to be, really impressed with the products, and I'm really excited to get the numbers out to everybody. But of course, we want to be very, very thorough in what we release. We don't necessarily want to give too much away. And that's basically it. I'll just go ahead and just finish the video here. This is a lot longer than I wanted it to be, but I'd always do like to kind of go over macro markets and what I'm thinking. And just to keep everything simple, it all comes down to the dollar and interest rates, right? Dollar goes down, markets go up. I mean, it's usually that simple. Interest rates go down, markets go up. So, we have this risk indicator here, which is the dollar and the 10-year yield. And you can see, like, as the price, as this indicator goes down, this was when we were at peak risk. It was super risky market. As the risk moves lower, you can see the market goes higher. So, there's really not much more to do about it. Just, instead of, predicting the market, just kind of read what the market's giving you here. So overall, we've seen ETH, kind of start to pick up here with some volume, and that's just a function of risk coming back into the market and people investing in these assets here. So looking at the monthly pivot for Ethereum, if we do continue to get a rally here, you can easily hit this central pivot. Bitcoin, similar setup where we have this 18K. So with the ETH to Bitcoin ratio, I was kind of watching. I was thinking maybe we could come back down and test this yearly pivot here, but what I noticed is I'm actually predicting what the pivot will be next year, and I'm actually starting to see we've actually found some support there. So that's kind of bullish that we are bouncing off the future pivot. So we'll see how all that plays out. It's sad, but it's really the only thing that matters is what the Fed says. They can jawbone to the till the day is long, but as long as these rates kind of stabilize and don't spike, that means that the Fed's in here purchasing debt. That's the only way that debt goes down. Somebody has to come in and buy this debt, right? And that's what they're doing. And that's when we'll see things like this. This is the Fed Treasury balance sheet, right? The M2. So you can see what happened this year is kind of flatlined, right? In May, they kind of stopped buying, right? And what do we see? Huge interest rate spikes, right? And look at here, we had a little bit of spike, but look what's happened over the last couple months. They just stopped buying debt. And even though we still are the balance sheet has gone up over the past year, it's starting to come back down, right? And it's gonna have to keep expanding if they want to stabilize the race like they said that they're going to do. So how this plays up with Bitcoin, it's usually an inverse where we saw this in COVID where huge spike in the monetary supply, huge spike in price. Now it's been a little bit off recently, but as I'm predicting that, or I'm thinking that as this goes back up, I think we can actually have Bitcoin start to go back up with the increase in the supply there. So, yep. So I mean, it's just a sad but true thing. It's just all about the Fed, and if they're going to pivot. So, looking at other things here, interesting setup for the HSI where I predicted what next year's pivot would be a couple days ago, and it's really played out very well off of, we have this yearly pivot support. So really interesting that this has been leading the entire market. They've kind of called the bottom where China's coming and saying they're ordering banks to buy stocks. So I don't know how much more bullish of a sign you needed. So that kind of led the US stocks as well. An interesting setup with the Bitcoin versus NASDAQ as well, as we saw Bitcoin was actually leading. Bitcoin is actually leading the stock market this week. So kind of interesting that this is Bitcoin versus NASDAQ. So we're starting to see Bitcoin outperform the NASDAQ pretty significantly. So we'll see if that will continue. We already went over BYTES. Zen. So I'm going to maybe talk about Zen a little bit more. I think there's a lot more opportunity than people realize with Zen. Zen's going to be launching NFTs at the end of this month, and I think we're going to see huge volume spikes on OpenSea. And I think that this people will be just very surprised on how much volume and how much burn that this is going to create for Ethereum. If you look at ultrasound money, you'll see that Zen is one of the biggest burners of Ethereum, and why it's actually gone deflationary ever since it's launched. So people are looking at the price only, but they're not looking at the fact that there is a lot of opportunity to provide liquidity support here. If you look at the volumes, 300,000, 190,000, and if you look at liquidity, there's only $100,000 in liquidity support. So if you do the numbers, look at how much you're talking about, a couple thousand, $3,000 a day. So if you're able to provide liquidity, let's see here, like somebody's doing at price liquidity here, 7K. And if you can get a majority of the liquidity fees. And I've been doing this, I've been providing support. And even as the price goes down, the volume is so high that the rewards I get actually it doesn't matter how low it goes really, because I'm getting so much in liquidity fees. So I just wanted to point that out. And just to finish up too, so this kind of ties into NeoTokyo, and it ties into Super Farm and the blood token. So if we're looking at the price here, I mean, we are at literally the bottom. So these are the times, when nobody's looking at blood token. They're all paying close attention to BYTES. They're chasing BYTES. This isn't, you don't want to, I mean, you can chase momentum and stuff, but the opportunity is buying when nobody's looking, right? For the BYTES token here, let me see, or the blood token for Super Farm, and of course I know that they're developing and they're working hard on their game. I'm a member. I'm able to play their beta game, and it's a fun game. And I do think that the blood token is just going to be hard to get when it's going to be needed. So like I said, like, you want to accumulate when nobody's watching, and here we are at the very bottom. So, and I'm just gonna finish with Twitter here actually, and just wanted to tell everyone, to follow Neo Tokyo News. It's kind of amazing that they don't have that many followers, right? So this is where you'll see all of the updates and stuff. So definitely give these guys a follow. They publish my weekly BYTES updates there, and also you can follow my Twitter. I'm posting Substack on the markets and what I think's happening, and I'm also I'm very active I'm very active on Discord, in the Umami Discord, and constantly, if you have any questions, if on trading, on what I think the charts are setting up or how I feel the markets are set, I'm always there. So, yep, just follow along as we prepare both Neo Tokyo and Umami. So, thanks again, guys. Really appreciate it, and I will catch you next time.